Okay. I think it's recording.
Yep, it says it's recording.
Okay, perfect. Did you get a chance to look at the website at all?
I
Or
did look at the website. One of the things that I know that there was one video that I could watch, but one of the things that the website said was, like if you joined a group that there would be questions
hmm
to consider ahead of time, and I wasn't able to see any of those because by the time I looked, I guess I wasn't able to join one of the screened showings. But
Okay.
because you have a calendar and it says like we're going to have this video at this time. And
Yeah.
so the teachers need to sign up at that
Yeah.
specific time. And so once they sign up, I'm going to like jump ahead. You could just tell me to stop. But
Uh-huh.
once they sign up, is that when they get the questions? Or are the questions posed to the entire group as part of the viewing?
Okay, so the questions are on the website. I think it might be hard to see, but they're sent out with the before you get the movie. Well, Katie kind of proctors all the this is her company. She proctors all the viewing experiences. So she before the movie starts, she poses some questions, but the main questions are um, try to learn some of the language in the film. Try to remember one scene and talk about one scene and what you learn from the culture of the film. And then I think another one is what's the most memorable part of the film? Was it a frame that you liked? Was it part of the dialogue that you really liked, or was it a character that you really liked? So just to like get students thinking about different cultures or different aspects of the film, and it's basically it's she wants to bring this film festival onto a platform to utilize for kids to learn and become um, cultural literate, develop their cultural literacy, and be able to connect with international peers because she wants this to be a global thing where kids from all over the world can create accounts on this application. So it's kind of like a lot of other streaming services, but it's different because it's the whole experience where you get Q&A with the director and actors of an international film, and they're all international films, so it introduces a different culture, a different language for these kids to see. So that's kind of what we're aiming at. But yeah, I'm sorry. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So I just have a few questions to ask you. I know you probably just looked at the website, but I was just interested to to get your input because you taught for how many years did you teach at Alta Vista?
So I taught 10 years at Alta Vista in third grade.
Yeah.
And then after that, I came out of the classroom and I did the ed tech kinds of things.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so for 6 years, I've kind of been out of the classroom doing ed tech and the maker space, the hands-on stuff.
Yeah. So that's so cool because we want to get this into classrooms hopefully um worldwide, and so we're reaching out to a lot of teachers to see what their feedback is. How can we best market it? How can we really engage different teachers? So I'll ask you a few questions. It's going to be short, maybe 20 minutes. So how would you use Screen 360 TV in your classroom? How would you use it?
So if it was available to me, so first off, I did notice that there were some that had no dialogue, and so having been a third grade teacher, those are probably the ones that I would go for first.
Okay.
And I think that I would look to see what the cultures are.
Mm-hmm.
That would be another thing. So I kind of like pulled up your class, and it wasn't your class, but I had one class that I had a girl who was Muslim, a boy who was Jewish, and we did a book exchange with a class in Denmark,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a Muslim class, and it was just so interesting. We read the same book.
Mm-hmm.
all, like we read the same book. Oh, and there was a Jewish school in San Diego. That was it. So it was two different schools. Denmark was the Muslim school, and then we had in my class we had both kids represented, right? Both cultures represented. And so for me to start with that kind of thing, I would probably look to see like what cultures are in my class that might be misunderstood.
Okay.
Because like we live in a very, our neighborhood has changed a lot.
Hmm.
But when I first started teaching at Alta Vista, I hardly had any diversity in my class at all,
Hmm.
right? And so to have my students understand the cultures of the other kids in their class would probably be my first thing, especially having been a third grade teacher.
Hmm.
And so I would first look for those offerings. Um, Having said that, I also had my class participate for a couple of years in something called the Flat Classroom Project.
Hmm.
And do you know about that, the Flat Classroom Project?
I don't think so. No.
Okay, so there's a woman who used to be out of Singapore. I don't know. I think she's moved around because she works for an international school. And they had 30 teachers involved from all different places in the world. And what they did is you threw all of your kids into the same pot. And
Mm.
then you, as a teacher, in this group, ended up with 12 kids that you supervised, and only two of them were from your school. Right. And then they did things like they shared, like, what does your bedroom look like? What do you eat for breakfast? And they would
Mm.
take pictures and they would share it and talk about those kinds of things. And so that's probably the next place that I would look, like what are the cultures that maybe I want my students to know a little bit more about? Like right now, like there's so many bad things that are being said about China,
Hmm.
right? So I probably would look for something there, something that represents Chinese kids so that my kids could see that they're exactly like the kids in China, right? So that's probably where I would start.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. How often do you think you would use it as well? Like, do you think showing movies maybe weekly or monthly? How would you think that would work?
So weekly really it's a huge commitment, right? So
Yeah.
a weekly kind of thing is really a huge commitment. And I know that as the tech teacher,
Hmm.
and I was trying to get different schools in different classes to do what were called mystery Skypes.
Hmm.
Right. So I would find a school from somewhere else, and
Yeah.
usually it was in the United States. But even in the United States, there's a lot of cultural diversity when you think about California
Hmm.
versus Idaho, right?
Yeah.
And so I would find a class somewhere else, and I would try to get a teacher's class to try to figure out where the other class was based on questions that they could ask. And
Hmm.
then they had a bunch of things that at the end, when we figured out that that class was in Idaho, then we had questions that we asked them and they asked us, right? But I never got a class to do it more than twice in a year. And even there was a thing called the Global Read Aloud, which I also got teachers involved in. And the Global Read Aloud was 6 weeks long. You either read at like third grade and up, they read a novel, and then they shared what they learned about the novel by asking questions. There usually was like one guiding question per chapter or per week.
Hmm.
Um, but getting the teachers through all 6 weeks was always really hard because there were so many other competing things that came in, and this to them was an add-on. It wasn't math, it wasn't language arts. The
Hmm.
kids weren't going to get tested on it. And so for them, having their students build knowledge of kids unlike themselves was not a high priority. Now that may change.
I hope so. Yeah.
We can hope, but it was always the thing that got pushed off.
Wow.
So I'm going to say that if you are able to, I don't know what the pricing model is here, right?
Mm.
And I'm going to say that if you find a teacher who is willing to commit to it for once a month, that would be good. I mean, So the project that I was in, the flat classroom project, it was a 12-week project. And
Okay.
it was like a lot of work, a lot of work on my part. But I was willing to do it because for me, this was a really important thing.
Uh-huh.
Because I lived, you could stop me if I'm going on too much, okay?
No, no, no,
I
it's good.
lived,
It's good.
I lived both in Canada and in England.
Okay.
And I know that we as Americans can be very myopic.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt that I wanted my students to have more of to have an outside the classroom walls and outside of Los Gatos experience that I don't know that unless they were traveling, and if they're traveling, like they're going to Europe and they're staying with their family and, it's not the same as actually meeting a kid from another place or
Yeah.
having a pen pal from a kid from another place or
Uh-huh.
reading a book together and having discussions. Like
Yeah.
I don't really, I guess I don't remember exactly if I did anything with your class, but I mean, there was,
I remember we all did, I think it was in your class where we created a character and we dressed them up and we
yes,
did
that's
cultures
right.
and
Yes.
we gave a presentation. I think I did Germany, but everyone did different countries around the world. It was
Yep.
pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And so, and even things, even like that,
Mhm.
like to learn about kids from other cultures.
Yeah.
But I tried to do things like I had one that was like draw a monster.
Oh, I
Was
think
it your,
I remember that.
was that your class?
I
Because
think
that class, so you had to create a monster and then write the directions on how somebody else would draw it.
uh-huh.
But when I did that, that was even with kids from Australia, so
Uh-huh.
even though my student may not have had face-to-face contact because at that time, like early on, we didn't have a lot of face-to-face contact. But the thing was, to me, like if they knew that they were communicating with somebody from a different country, I hoped that they would somehow remember and think about the fact that this kid in Australia goes to school and writes narratives or descriptive things just like you. And when I was living in other countries also, like sometimes you see Americans and they're just like so American. Like you
Hmm.
just want to say like, stop being so American
Yeah.
and just enjoy where you are. Um, so I think that it's really important to give kids for lots of different reasons. I mean, we're international companies now. And
Yeah.
if you're going to work for an international company, you have to have some cultural sensitivity. And that's just not something that we build into our curriculum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that was basically my next question, which you already touched on a lot, was what is the social, cultural, and educational value of Screen 360? And how does a system like this support or distract from the necessary address of racial equality, especially in today's world, which you addressed a lot, but if you have anything to add about that.
So even when I was doing things, it was very interesting because if I would go out and like specifically look for a class that was maybe in South America or
Hmm.
in um, in Africa, like it was so hard because once there was a class that was available, there were so many teachers in the United States that wanted to make a connection with that class.
Yeah.
Right? And so the nice thing about these movies is that you don't have to go searching for the class,
Hmm.
right? The movie is there and different. So here's a question. So if, how many different, ideally, how many different classes or how many different groups of people would be screening one movie? Like, is there a limit or is there an ideal number?
There's not an ideal number. So right now we're working on a prototype for an application actually. So it's basically we're trying to create what Netflix has where they have a streaming service and anyone can just go in and stream. We'd have a collection of international films and then any teacher could go in and click the film and they'd have just in front of them the Q&A session with the director, the international film, and then some questions that Katie would pose. And it'd just be a collection of however many international films for teachers to show whenever they want. So right now, I know you said that the website it has like specific scheduled movies because we're still prototyping and testing the mobile app.
Hmm.
So eventually we want to get it to a point where it's just an app that anyone can access, such as Netflix, and you license it either at a school or you could have your own individual account and then stream international movies and Q&As. So that's our goal. Hmm.
So that's good from a teacher's point of view. I mean, from my point of view, and because I was always thought it was so important for the kids to have like actual contact with other kids. Like there was a time when I did this, when we all read the same book. I
Hmm.
can't remember the name of the book though at the moment. And we all read the same book, and there was a class in Denmark and the class and who was learning English, and the class in San Diego. In my class, we didn't have the ability to do FaceTime kinds of things, but at that time, Google Docs was really new. And so I would put up on the smartboard in the classroom the Google Doc and the two teachers, and it was hard because of the time. The people in Denmark, I don't remember what exactly happened, but we would type back and forth, and the kids could see what was being said. And I would type in green, and the teacher in San Diego would type in red or whatever, right? So we knew that there were different people. I think that me as a teacher, asking the kids questions is good, but I also think that if there's some way to have some kind of, even if it's asynchronous, kind of dialogue with another class on
Hmm.
that same video, on that same film, right? Because if I'm just showing it in my class, then even though there might be insights to these kids in Los Gatos, having watched this video about a kid in Romania,
Yeah.
to have somebody else's point of view at the same time is really important because our kids get in a little echo chamber, right?
Yeah. 100%. 100%.
So I think that that personal contact is also really
Hmm.
important. Somehow to
Yeah.
have some kind of contact.
We're trying to in each film that teachers show, our goal is to get hopefully teachers from all over the world to show it at the same time because there is a chat window that
Great.
pops up. So like each classroom could be chatting all at once, which
That's
is
awesome.
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. So we're hoping, yeah, we have a prototype right now, but we're designing it. We're trying to get it to work, just the design to look nice and get it to work. But I think it would be very valuable. I think teachers would definitely benefit from showing their kids these films and then getting just interacting with people all over the world. I think kids would love that too.
Yeah, I think the kids would love it, but not only would they love it, but I think that that gives you more of a value. Like,
Hmm.
and like I said, like our kids, I remember going to a talk at some conference way early on. And there was a guy who was talking about how Americans, he showed the large increase in the number of Americans who are working abroad.
Hmm.
And I don't know what that looks like now and how it's going to look like in the next couple of years. But at the time, like the number of Americans who were living and working abroad was growing. And yet many of these companies that the Americans went to work for, Americans would get to like a certain level and wouldn't be able to move beyond because it was felt that they didn't have the cultural sensitivity.
Hmm.
And so to me, that was something important that I wanted to try to expose my students to, even at third grade. Hopefully, I mean, in third grade, kids are still um, forming opinions about different people and about different
Yeah.
things and who they are, um, and they're still, I think, pretty open and accepting. I
Hmm.
think once you get to middle school, I think you kind of sort of have a little bit more idea of who you think you are, right?
Yeah,
And
definitely.
so I thought even at third grade, if I could give my students some kind of experience that somehow later, even though they may have been unconscious of it, would have helped their mind be a little bit more open, then that was important.
Hmm. And my next question is, I wonder because our target right now is private schools and international schools that have a lot of money to pay for services. I wonder if it can add value to public schools. I don't know how much money public schools have to
Yeah.
to
I'm
pay
gonna
for.
come right back. I'm gonna get some water. One
Okay,
second.
okay.
Okay. Yeah, so right now, public schools are so strapped. They're so
Yeah,
strapped.
yeah.
I mean, the governor just said that yesterday that they are not going to cut the K-12 budget, but
Hmm.
that was something that we were thinking was going to happen. Plus, the schools are having to pay all kinds of extra money to put in all of these coronavirus kinds of
Right.
security things. So, so the flat classroom project cost money.
Hmm.
And the first year I paid for it myself. Well, you know, Alta Vista, in many schools, the Home and School Club gives the teacher a certain amount of money to
Okay.
spend each year. Um, Alta Vista is because the parents raise a lot of money,
Yeah.
we're very generous. And so I shouldn't have said I spent my own money, but I used that pot of money to help pay for the flat classroom project.
Okay.
Um, but not all schools have home and school club money. And so I can't imagine that the school itself would have the money to pay for it,
Okay.
the subscription. So you either have to have home and school clubs who find that this might be something really interesting and worth funding, or
Hmm.
you have to have a teacher who's really passionate. And we all know that public school teachers spend money out of their own pockets, like who would be willing to pick up the cost. And so
Hmm.
I think that the cost would be a major consideration for public schools.
Hmm.
I think for international schools, this is great.
Hmm.
This is absolutely great for international schools. Private schools, I don't really have a lot of experience with private schools and how much money they have and how they're funded. I mean, I know that they have tuition,
Uh-huh.
um, but I don't know how they would pay for programs like this.
Okay. I'm curious how much you paid for the flat project. Was it an annual subscription or was it monthly?
No, it was based on the project, right?
Oh,
So the flat classroom project had a couple of different things. I can't remember the one that I did essentially had, like the kids showing like what foods they ate and like what
mm,
your playground looked like and that kind of stuff. I can't remember what they called it. But anyway, that one, I think I want to say $129 for the program.
okay. Okay.
So it was $129. The first year that included one of the platforms that we used that actually had a subscription fee. The second year they moved it over to Edmodo, which was free.
Okay.
Um, but yeah,
Right now we're thinking 1,500 a year. I don't know how much would you be willing to pay? I know teachers obviously you don't pay out of pocket, but I wonder how much do you think public schools would be willing to pay if it's 1,500 for the whole year for all teachers combined.
see, so I think that it's going to have to depend on whether or not that school will make a commitment to it. Because
Yeah.
$1,500 is actually a lot of money for a school, for a public school's budget,
Okay.
right? And so there, like I know that we were having some discussions, especially because we didn't know what our budget was going to look like for next year. And we're looking at, like all of these different programs that we're spending money on. And so one of them that we have some teachers who really have enjoyed, it's called Flowtabulary. And I can't remember, it's in that range per year per school. But
Hmm.
they totally looked at the statistics and they said, oh yeah, like there's a couple of fourth grade teachers, there's maybe a fifth grade teacher who's using it, but all of the lower classroom teachers aren't using it, it's gone.
Wow.
Right. So I think you really have to have, I think you have to market it to a school that really feels that this is an important thing to do right now. Like this is important that your kids broaden their mind, you know, like what kinds that they need to have exposure to different kinds of ideas, different kinds of people. And if you as a school decide that this is going to be one of our goals this year,
Hmm.
and it might be really hard that it's international and not based in the United States this year. Do you know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? You know, like because of, you know, all of our discussions right now among adults and young people about people of color and how we have misunderstood each other.
Yeah.
I think that the focus in the United States this coming year will probably be more localized. You know, like what do I think about the kids who are in my class who are from Latin America or, you know, African American? I don't know if it's going to be international this year.
Yeah. That's such a good point. Yeah. And my next question was you were touching on it a little bit. How would you recommend Screen 360 to get more teachers engaged? How yeah.
Yeah, so I do think that when so one of the things, like I was always a little bit, because I lived in two different countries before coming and living here.
Hmm.
I think that I was already open to the fact that I wanted my kids to have experiences, like I said, beyond the classroom walls and maybe beyond Los Gatos, right?
Uh-huh.
But I think that that's one of the things, like if especially if you're going after private schools and international schools. Now, international schools already know that kids move around and that they should be culturally sensitive to the areas that they're living in.
Hmm.
When we lived in England, our daughter was in um, fourth grade. Yeah, fourth grade. And I specifically did not want to put her in the American school. I mean, first off, it's a whole long story, but which I won't bore you with. But I wanted her to have to be in a school with kids who lived in England. I didn't want her to be in a school with all American kids because to me that wasn't the right kind of international experience. And so I think that if you go and you say, look, we know that there are Americans,
Hmm.
we're working in multinational companies, and the idea that the chance of your students being able to work outside of the borders of the United States increase when they have cultural sensitivities. And so to we want to be able to, you know, one of the jobs of a school is to prepare students for the future, their future careers, right? And
Hmm.
so that's one of the skill sets that our kids are missing
Hmm.
is that cultural sensitivity. And so we want to make sure that they start being exposed to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's probably how I would, I mean, I don't know that that would be the only thing, but that's definitely one of the things that I would look at.
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely what we're going for too, is cultural literacy and international peers, which I think is so important. And that's basically what you really honed in on when you were a teacher. I always remembered that was valuing diversity and um yeah, that's great. I thank you so much for all your advice and feedback. Is there anyone else you'd recommend to me to reach out to get feedback that you know of?
Um, Let me think about this because I would want you to talk with somebody who might have. I might know someone. I might know someone. I wanted her current. She's a teacher who is. I think her family is Korean,
Mm-hmm.
and she is very very into the diversity. But
Mm-hmm.
but again, you know, like I think it's more having local understanding of the kids who are who live in your neighborhood or in your, not in our neighborhood, but like in San Jose area, that kind of
Right.
neighborhood,
Hmm.
rather than international. But I can ask her if that would be something that she'd be interested in talking with you about.
Hmm. That'd be great. Yeah, I
Yeah,
love that. Thank you so much. Would you like to know the outcome?
I would. I would love to know. Yeah, that'd be
Okay.
great.
Yeah, I'll
So
keep.
how long are you doing this? How long is your class?
So, it's actually it's a only a pop-up 5-day class with six very cool teachers from Stanford who put this together. I'm taking classes at Stanford this summer, and it's a free class. And I met Katie Kavanaugh through this mixer because I'm really into movies. I love storytelling, and I'm doing a little bit of screenwriting at USC,
Oh,
and
that's
so
great.
yeah, I'm just I love it, and so um, Katie introduced me to her idea, Screen 360, and I love international films because I've just been watching a lot of those, and I just loved her idea. And Katie welcomed me to her team, and we've been working on this project for a few weeks. And our mission so far was to interview at least 10 to 12 individuals before our class, which starts Monday next week. And so I've been reaching out to a few people, and I thought of you because you reached out to me over LinkedIn, and I was like, oh, I should ask Mrs. Lynch. And so yeah, I was so happy when you responded, and you're actually my first interview so far.
Oh, how fun. Well, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, Katie's interviewed a few people, but yeah, I'll let you know how it goes. We just got another mentor who's the executive at Movie Lab, so hopefully he can help us out too. But thank you so much. Yeah,
Sure, sure. Say hi to your family for me.
I will. Yeah,
All
yeah.
right.
Great
All right.
seeing.
I'm going to check with the other teacher and I'll let you know.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. Take
Thank you.
care.
Bye.
Bye.